The town of Paulette, Vermont was met with darkness one very early morning on September 15, 2024. Here, everyone knew everyone. Generations of families lived and breathed in this little town. But one fateful day woke the town up to a news no one saw coming, nor could have predicted. A brutal triple homicide that would shake the very core of the people. The victims were Brian Crossman Sr., a local leader who was very well respected, Erica, his loving wife, and to them, 13-year-old son Colin, the alleged murderer. A supposed stranger came in for a burglary. But how could such a brutal and sad crime occur in such a tight-knit community? What family could have created the way for such evil to grow within? This is the story of the dark secrets shared by this family, something that no one could have ever conceived. Right after the crime happened, Brian Jr., the 23-year-old son, called the police. He was out for a walk for a few hours, and when he came back, his entire family lay dead, right in front of his eyes. The story only got even more complicated from there. As the police entered the crime scene, they realized something strange. Brian had bloodied clothing and multiple weapons in the gun room, which made them wonder who the true suspect behind these crimes were. But the more the investigation goes on, the question is Brian Crossman Jr. really responsible for all those massacres? Or is there something much more sinister hiding behind the Crossman family's farmhouse walls?
2733 Vermont Route 133. Horrible things happen here. The Rutland County State's Attorney's Office says before 4 a.m. on September 15th, Brian Crossman Jr. called police to tell them he found his father, stepmother, and stepbrother shot to death inside their home.
To understand the story better, let's go back to the exact time when the murders took place. It was 4 a.m. when Vermont State Police received the unexpected call. Brian Crossman Jr. said he had just walked into his house from a stroll and found his father, stepmother, and 13-year-old stepbrother dead in the family's farmhouse. He didn't sound panicked, though. His voice sounded calm, creepily calm. This wasn't the typical reaction of someone who just came across the bodies of their loved ones. The detectives who came to the scene, they expected to find an innocent son distraught by the death of his family, but something didn't add up. On their arrival, Crossman Jr. stood in the school parking lot where he had driven his father's truck to meet them. His clothes were drenched with blood, an odd detail for someone who thought he was just discovering the bodies. But that was only the beginning. The farm household has many more secrets behind its doors. The police entered the house only to be welcomed by a gruesome sight of 3 bodies, all shot with bullets. Brian Crossman Sr., aged 46, had been shot several times through the head and elsewhere in the body. His wife, Erica, was 41 and was found similarly shot once in the head, a bullet that did not give much of a chance at survival. The most tragic of all is the body of 13-year-old Colin Tate, son by a previous relationship of Erica's, who was shot multiple times in his small bedroom. The house had a story to tell, but not that of a typical home invasion. There was no forced entry, no ransacking, no sign of theft. It became extremely clear that whoever did this was close to the family.
The deceased man was Crossman's father, 46-year-old Brian Crossman Sr., a Paulette Select Board member. He was dead from a gunshot wound to the head and chest. Crossman's stepmother, 41-year-old Erica Paluziak Crossman, was also found inside, naked and dead from being shot in the head. The couple only married for under 3 months. Then there was Crossman's stepbrother, Colin Taft, only 13 years old, dead from multiple gunshot wounds.
When detectives started interrogating Brian Crossman Jr., his story began to crumble very quickly. He said he went for a walk and on his return saw the gruesome scene there. But why would he go out of the house in the dead of night? Why was the blood found on his clothing if he did not kill them? And why did he run away immediately in the truck of his father, meeting police at a distance away from the crime scene instead of staying in his house and trying to figure out what went down? Crossman Jr. stated that the blood got on his clothes because he tried to drag his deceased dad outside the house and into a utility vehicle to take him to his grandmother's house. But why? Further investigation into Crossman Jr.'s past proved that the investigators were right to suspect something. They found a problematic history and showed that he never really got on well with his father. On the surface, the Crossman family was like any other rural Vermont family. However, problems ran deep and Brian Jr. was at the center of it all. One of the first angles that the investigators explored was what related to the mental stability of Brian Jr. Such a person had a history of emotional instability and had been involved in several confrontations with his father throughout the years. Their relationship was only best described as strained at worst. and it became much worse once Brian Sr. remarried. The addition of Erica Crossman to the family seemed enough to break what was an already fragile situation. Was it really this simple? Was it this new family situation that became too much for this young man to bear? Rumors also said that Brian Jr. was depressed for years. But there's more to this incident than mental illness. He is a man who knows so much about weapons, one who has a deep, unsettling knowledge of firearms. In a farmhouse, there was a gun room, a whole room given to weapons and ammunition, and Brian Jr. was no stranger to these weapons, and the doors to them were wide open. Was it an act of calculated violence? The pieces of the puzzle slowly started falling into place. The investigators made an analysis of Brian's phone, among other electronic evidence that looked as though he was a key party to the murder. The search history showed his recent consumed content being of serial killers and unsolved murders. His alibi that he had been out walking was the weakest excuse, and almost all forensic evidence basically proved his guilt. It was not the blood on his clothes alone. It was the inconsistencies in his story, the evidence of premeditation, and his suspicious behavior in the last hours to the killings. But it was the naked brutality of the murder that was really chilling. Gunshot after gunshot into his father's head and torso, repeated shots into his younger stepbrother. This was not a case of self-defense or crime of passion. It was something much darker.
Brian Crossman Jr. is being held here at the Warren County Correctional Facility for shooting and killing his entire family. That's his father, Brian Crossman Sr., his stepmother, Erica Crossman, and his 13-year-old stepbrother, Colin Taft. Now, police say when they arrived at the home on Sunday morning off of Vermont State Route 133, they found Brian Crossman Jr. outside the home and covered with blood. He told police that there were dead people inside. And when police asked Crossman Jr. what had happened, he said he had went for a walk just after midnight Sunday morning. And then when he returned to home a couple hours later, Crossman Jr. saying he located his family dead inside.
The investigation was going much more deep. The investigation kept going deeper and deeper, trying to answer any questions. And the town of Paulette was still on edge as it worried about the gruesome murders. Brian Sr. had been a member of the Follett Select Board for some time, and Erica naturally became a part of the community quickly. People asked each other why. Why would he do that to his family? The town refused to believe that Brian Jr. was the perpetrator. There had to be something wrong. Was it something else? Could it be that someone else was involved? Or was it all an elaborate setup? Questions seemed to run throughout as the community hung on its every word, putting everyone on edge. And when the details came flooding out, the case just got more tense than anyone could imagine. Just a few days later, Brian Crossman Jr. was cornered in the town of Granville, New York, just a few miles to this side of the Vermont border. He didn't put up a fight, though. In fact, by the time police arrived, it seemed almost as if he knew they would arrest him. He was arrested on 3 counts of aggravated murder and was held without bail as he waited extradition to Vermont. What was going to be revealed in the courtroom drama? Was there some shocking confession in the case, or would Brian Jr. attempt to mount a defense based on mental health issues? It was all still a mystery for everybody waiting far beyond, and also for the people in Vermont.
New York State Police issued an arrest warrant and took Brian Crossman Jr. of Granville, New York, into custody today. He is being held without bail until he can stand before a judge to be extradited to Vermont.
The biggest question hanging over the case is motive. Why in the world would a young man kill his father, stepmother, and stepbrother? Some speculated that a combination of mental illness and a strained family relationship had finally boiled over. Others pointed to Brian Jr.'s past, his struggles with anger and resentment toward his father. The fact that Erica and Colin were also victims added another layer of complexity to the case. Was it jealousy, hatred of this new family dynamic, or maybe it was an outburst of pent-up emotional buildup over the years? The trial would help answer some of the questions left in everyone's mind, though for now, they were left to wonder. Murders like the Brian Crossman Sr., Erica Crossman, and Colin Taft definitely leave a permanent scar on any community, like the scar on Paulette. As the days go by and more knowledge comes out of proceedings, one thing is clear. The family's tragic tale is far from over. Is Brian Jr. the sole killer, or is there more to this story? Only time and the courts can say. The town of Paulette continues to be in search of answers, as Brian Jr. sits inside of jail waiting for his day in court. The mental illness problems, the strained father-son relationship, and the bloody scene paints a picture which is especially gruesome.
Brian Crossman was a friend and a neighbor, a hard-working community member who just this year stepped up to join the Paulette Select. This tragedy that has struck him and his family also hit our community very hard. We are all shaken and grieving. Our hearts go out to everyone affected by this devastating loss. The town of Pollitt will work to get through this, as we always have through hard times, by supporting each other and doing our best to carry on the Pollitt Select Board.
The town is left to understand the loss, and the rest of us are left wondering what led to this great tragedy. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.